Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Tuesday to everybody. Man, I got somebody on the phone today that I've been looking forward to talking to for a while now. I've done a few videos on Missouri football ever since I found out that Kelly Bryant was transferring there, and I got a very mixed bag of reactions from Missouri fans, as you all know. But I got a Missouri fan that came on, that contacted me, was willing to come on and talk about Missouri football, talk about Kelly Bryant. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce him now. His name is Cole. How you doing, Cole?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Hey, I'm amazing and fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time out of your day to come on and talk Missouri football with me.
No problem. I appreciate you getting back to me.
All right, so we were just talking off air for a second, and you said that you watched some of the Missouri videos that I posted after. So here's the way it happened. As soon as I heard that Kelly Bryant was transferring to Missouri, I went right on YouTube like I normally do. Anytime there's any kind of breaking news in college football, or especially as far as the Clemson Tigers are concerned, and I made a couple of videos. And like I just said in the intro there, I got a mixed bag of reactions from Missouri fans. Some of them were fine. Other ones, I mean, listen, there's one guy on there that once told me if I ever come to Missouri, I'm going to get my face rearranged and all this other nonsense. But I just want to give you, listen, I have a lot of questions for you, but I also want to give you just sort of my opinion on the transfer of Kelly Bryant, and also what I've looked into since that I made those videos about Missouri's season and about where I think they're headed in 2019. You down for that?
I'm all ears.
All right. So here we go. We'll go ahead and get started. So,
all right.
First things first. I was looking at Missouri's schedule for 2019. And I was actually shocked. Yeah. This looks like it is a very, very manageable and favorable schedule as far as Missouri is concerned. So you're in the East. The East is very unpredictable right now, with Tennessee having a slump over the past decade or so. Florida is still a little bit unknown because of the coaching change. I do think Florida is getting better, but let's be honest here. You know as well as I know, the East is probably the weaker of the two divisions in the SEC.
Oh,
and so when I look at when I look at Missouri,
I actually I used to go to school down in Mississippi.
Right. So when I look
I'm all about the West.
When I look at Missouri's schedule this year, your two cross divisional games, in other words, the teams that you play in the West this year, are Ole Miss and Arkansas. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. So if I look at that, and I look at the roster that you have coming back, and I don't pretend to be an expert on Missouri's roster. I really don't. But I do know that Ole Miss is definitely a winnable game, and of course Arkansas is probably the worst team in the SEC as far as I'm concerned, at least as of right now. So your biggest games are going to be against Georgia, obviously in the East, since that's the best team in the East for the past couple of years. Again, Florida is an unknown, and then maybe South Carolina. I don't even know if you can consider that a tough game, but they have had your number at least over the past few years. But I still think that, let's say that you win, let's say you beat Ole Miss and Arkansas, your two West games. That means that even if you lose a game or two in the East, that still puts you at 10-2, because the rest of your schedule is, quite frankly, pretty easily, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we got really lucky this year, actually. I mean, we did the cross game for this year, from last year and this year with Wyoming, which shouldn't be a hard game. I haven't looked much up on West Virginia right now. I mean, I know they just lost Greer, so SEMO, Southeast Missouri State, FCS school. Yeah. But then you get to that Carolina game, and that always seems to be a trap game for us.
So let me ask you this: where is the South Carolina game being played this year? I did not look at that.
It is at Mizzou.
All right, it's at Mizzou. So where is you just mentioned West Virginia. Now, I must have overlooked that. So that's obviously an out-of-conference game. So where is that game being played?
Yes.
And when is it being played?
That is also that's our game of the season, and that is at Mizzou also.
Okay, so there you go. There's two of your 4 toughest games of the year, I would imagine, and those are both at Missouri?
Yes.
Okay, so there you go. So
yeah,
so I can see Missouri.
We got stuck last year in South Carolina.
Okay, so I could easily see Missouri winning 9 or 10 games. And now, listen, I know you guys have a postseason ban this year, and that really shouldn't take away from the fact that the Missouri could still have a record year. At least, so Missouri came into the SEC. What was it? 2014. What year was that?
We came in 2012, actually, I believe.
All right,
it was.
All right, 2012, and the first 2 years after leaving the Big 12 and making the jump to the SEC, you guys won the East 2 consecutive years, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Our first year, we went either 7-5 or 5-7. It was kind of that transitional period of what, we're moving to the SEC and what to look for kind of thing.
Right.
And then the next 2 years just when Mizzou was, against Auburn for, possibly a national championship if we won that game against Florida State. And then we played Bama the next year in the SEC championship.
So you've been in the SEC championship, what, once or twice? Twice, right. All right. I thought I had that right. So
yeah, 2013-14 we made it.
Let me give you my thoughts on the whole Kelly Bryant thing, and then how I compare what's going on at Missouri to what's been going on at Clemson for the past few years. Now, obviously, Clemson never had a bowl season ban or anything like that, so I can't relate to that part of it. But when you look at Missouri's roster, and again, I'm not an expert on Missouri's roster. You probably know, well, you don't probably, you do know 10 times more about Missouri's roster than I do. But when you look at, so when Kelly Bryant announced that he was going to Missouri, I was actually a little bit surprised. Now, I was actually a little bit pleasantly surprised because of the 4 teams that he was projected to go to. Those were Miami, Auburn, Missouri, and Mississippi State from all the reports that came out. Now, if he went to Auburn, I wouldn't have been too happy about that because we have a recent history with Auburn. Clemson has played Auburn 4 times since 2010. And Miami is obviously in the and Miami is obviously in the ACC, so I did not want to see him go to an ACC school. Mississippi State, I'm irrelevant about that. I wouldn't have cared if he went there, but he went to Missouri, and that leaves me in a position where I can actually root for Missouri because I don't, Clemson and Missouri don't have any sort of history together as far as being rivals or playing each other. And so there's no beef there, so I can actually pull for Kelly Bryant in Missouri in 2019. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to be a Missouri fan for the rest of my life or anything, but as far as 2019 goes, in the SEC and especially in the East, I'll be pulling for Missouri because I don't like Georgia, I don't like Florida, I don't like Tennessee, I don't like South Carolina, I don't like any of your, East foes that you play. So I have grown to figure out. I didn't understand it at first, why he went to Missouri. But now, now that I've had a couple of months to reflect on it and being in contact with some of Missouri fans on YouTube and on Twitter and everything else, I do understand why he went there now. And a lot of the reason is, number one, Barry Odom, and number 2 is Derek Dooley. It makes a lot of sense. And that offense, with the weapons they have, that he's trying to make it to the NFL. And I think out of all those schools that I just named, the best road to the NFL and the best coaching staff to help him get there is probably in Columbia, Missouri. Do you agree with that?
I would, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Mizzou fan, of course, but I think that hire of Derek Dooley that we had coming from the Cowboys, I think that really helped out. I think Kelly Bryant saw how much that helped out Drew Lock, because Drew Lock, it's hard for Missouri fans right now. He was our quarterback for 3.5 years.
Yeah. And
now he's gone. And I think he easily could have. I saw the video when you said that you had him at your fantasy for the SEC because of the numbers he put up.
Right.
And he didn't put up the stellar numbers of the, 44 passing touchdowns and the 4,000-yard season he had last year. But looking at it, I think he did have a better season under a more pro-style offense instead of, everybody just run down the field, and I'm just going to chuck it deep and hope you guys can catch it.
Right. And so that's where I was confused at first with Kelly Bryant choosing Missouri before I really looked into it and educated myself on the whole thing. Is if you look at Kelly Bryant,
what you just talked about.
If you look at Kelly Bryant's history at Clemson, and so here's the thing: Clemson fans are split on the way they feel about Kelly Bryant. I love him. I always did, and I always will. Mm-hmm. And Clemson fans have become like a lot of teams that win a lot in a short period of time. They become spoiled. And so we had Deshaun Watson, and obviously Deshaun Watson was, in my opinion, the best quarterback to ever put on a Clemson jersey in my life, or maybe ever in Clemson's history. And then so Kelly Bryant sat behind him for 2 years. He's a South Carolina kid, born and raised. He sat behind Deshaun Watson for 2 years, waited his turn, and then with Trevor Lawrence, he knew he was coming in the year after, and he was the hottest quarterback prospect in high school for a couple of years. And all he did was wait his turn and then come in there and take Clemson in what was supposed to be a rebuild year and lead them and go 12-2 and go all the way to the playoffs. And yeah, they got beat by Alabama, but Kelly Bryant is an amazing football player, and also he's a very good kid. And you guys will learn this about him if you haven't already. He's got a very good personality. He's a jokester. He's got a very positive type of personality, and he is a leader. And so that's what Missouri is getting with Kelly Bryant. What is your impression before seeing Kelly Bryant take the field and actually play a football game? What is your impression of what you're getting with Kelly Bryant this year?
So I've already watched a couple of like the spring practice and stuff, recaps and stuff.
Yeah.
And so Larry Roundtree is a running back for us. He's going to be our number one. He had 1,200 rushing yards last year. He was doing an interview, and this was like day one. And Kelly Bryant comes up and starts mocking him in the middle of his interview. And I'm like, that's a guy that just came here and it's already, it looks like feels at home with the team.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for a player to feel like you're a part of the team and not, not like the transfer, oh, he's just here because he wants to get to the NFL, and so he picked Mizzou. I think he picked Mizzou, one, because, he had offers from a lot of other schools, and I saw, like, when you originally saw why he didn't pick how he didn't pick Auburn, you were like, well, Auburn has so many more primetime games and stuff than Mizzou.
Right.
And I think that speaks about Kelly Bryant on, I want to do what's best but I want to pick the school that's best for me and not for what will get my name out there, because on prime time, it can go one of two ways. You can have a phenomenal game, but if you play bad, you're on primetime TV.
Yeah. I agree. And I really, at this point now like I said, I understand why he picked Missouri. I didn't understand it at first. That was my initial reaction to it. But I do think that he made the best choice. I also do think that he also still wanted to be a Tiger, and so he's still a Tiger. And I also think that he still wanted to have a chance to demolish and embarrass the South Carolina Boom Chickens one last time in his college career. How do you feel about that?
I would agree with that. I'm a Missouri fan. I've been a Mizzou fan my entire life. And to see them finally get over the hump, 2014, we come into this season ranked, 13th overall, and we go into South Carolina comes to Mizzou 8-0. We go to overtime and they kick a field goal, and next thing you know, our undefeated season's out the window.
Right.
And ever since then, it was that whole, and then last year, I don't know if you saw the game last year, but Mizzou had the lead, and then the freaking monsoon happened in the middle of the game.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to that Mizzou offense, but they just couldn't get anything going while it was raining. And it suddenly the lead just trickled away from them, and it's like, well, there's another game we dropped to South Carolina.
Yeah.
That we should have won.
Yeah, you really should have won that game. I was actually a little bit disappointed. So let me ask you this, though. So again, I'm not an expert on Missouri's roster, but if you could just give me a handful of guys, maybe a couple on offense, maybe a couple on defense, for Missouri's team that you're looking forward to most to seeing this coming year, and people, maybe players that the rest of the country should know about.
So offense, I think this is another reason why he picked Mizzou, because on offense, I was looking over it. We have 2 seniors, a junior, and 2 sophomores on the offensive line. So we have 3 returning offensive linemen, which as a quarterback, I figured you'd want returning offensive line. But then when I look at like our receivers, Cam Scott is going to be a sophomore. He was a true freshman last year, played phenomenal. Jonathan Johnson, he was our guy. He's a little slot receiver who he'll run over the middle, and he's not afraid to do it. He's a senior returning. And then Jalen Knox is another going to be a sophomore next year, and he's also a phenomenal receiver. And so I think looking at just those 3 receivers that he saw were going to be at Mizzou next year, of course, Cam Scott and Jalen can't go. I guess they could transfer if they so desired. I don't know why you would if you had the season you did last year, but they can't go to the draft. And then right after Bryant committed to Missouri, Albert, we call him Albert O. It's Albert Okawebanam. It's a mouthful to say. He's rated maybe the best tight end in the country.
Right. I've heard of him. Yeah.
He got injured though, and so every Mizzou fan was frightened of, great, is he going to go to the NFL? Because a lot of people were saying he could if he wanted to. I think he's 6'5", like 250 pounds, and can catch a ball that comes anywhere near him. He was one of Drew Lock's huge targets, and I think him coming back also. I think Kelly Bryant saw the amount of weapons he had coming back to Mizzou on that offense. Right. And Drew Lock being gone too, you don't have to play behind a quarterback that the entire nation watches.
So that's a great segue.
To see how well he does.
That's a great segue into my next question here. So obviously Drew Lock and Kelly Bryant are worlds apart in their skill set. And that was another thing that sort of surprised me about why he picked Missouri. But again, I understand it now. And so the big question is, so Kelly Bryant gives you a different type of threat than what Drew Lock gave you. Drew Lock is obviously a prolific passer. I think he'll probably be the 2nd or 3rd quarterback taken in this year's draft. And 2 years ago, he had ungodly numbers. He had like almost 5,000 yards and 44 touchdowns or something in 2017.
Yeah, he said that's correct.
Yeah. And so Kelly Bryant's not going to give you that, but he's going to give you something a lot different. And I think in the college game, especially in the SEC, if I want to add that to it, he's going to give you a whole different, something completely different for SEC defenses to have to deal with. And that's the fact that he can run, and he's a better runner than Watson, and Watson was a great runner at Clemson. He's not as good of as good of a passer as Deshaun Watson or Drew Lock or definitely not Trevor Lawrence is right now at Clemson, but he's still an above average passer. And so it's going to be, for these teams that have been preparing for Drew Lock for the past 3 years in the East, it's going to be a whole different ball game when they have to go up against a Kelly Bryant that can beat him with both his legs and his arm. And so the biggest question I have, and let me know what you think as far as can this be done, because I honestly don't know, is do you think that Derek Dooley and that offensive staff from Missouri is going to change the way that they call these plays and sort of tailor the offense around what Kelly Bryant does best and sort of maximize the potential of what his skill set is?
So I honestly think, with how Missouri ran their offense last year, Missouri ran a ton of RPOs.
Yeah.
Even though they knew they had Drew Lock with a massive arm. Maybe one of the best that Mizzou's ever seen. or probably the best that's ever come through Missouri.
Yeah.
And arm strength-wise, at least. But towards the end, I mean, Drew Lock would sometimes just pull it and run, and teams were not expecting it at all.
Yeah.
And I think Kelly Bryant might have actually seen some of those too, and been like, "Well, see, they do have options for the quarterback to run already in their offense."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to Derek Dooley being at Dallas and having Dak Prescott.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Who, was never afraid to tuck it and run if he had to.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing of, I don't think it's going to be as hard of a transition for the offense because Derek Dooley's already had to deal with not a very mobile, but a quarterback at the next level.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't even think about that part of it with Derek. I considered it whenever thinking about, Kelly Bryant wants to go in the NFL. Obviously, Derek Dooley has direct connections to the NFL in recent years, and he can prepare him for everything he needs to know as far as the combine's concerned and the recruiting process and the draft process or whatever. So I completely understood that part of it. I'd never even considered the fact of what you just said is that the last couple of years that Derek Dooley was at Dallas, he had Dak Prescott as his quarterback. And I couldn't think of another pro quarterback right now that fits what Kelly Bryant does better than Dak Prescott. I mean, it's almost a mirror image, really.
It is. I mean, I think they both have the same. I think Dak Prescott might be a little bit of a better passer at the moment, but he's also had more time, especially with NFL talent, to throw to. But I think Kelly Bryant's a better runner than Dak. I think he's faster. I think he has.
Oh yeah. Better instincts.
I think he has more of that, that vision for running.
Yeah.
But still has a great vision for passing.
And if you look at Dak Prescott when he was at Mississippi State, he wasn't a great passer at Mississippi State. He's definitely grown into a better passer since he's been with the Cowboys than he was when he was in the SEC. So I think that you just So you've just drawn a direct parallel. I think Kelly Bryant and Dak Prescott are an amazing comparison, really, that I've never even thought of, and that they are so similar in their college style of football that. It makes even more sense to me now exactly why he picked Missouri, and with all the weapons that they have coming back and everything. So that makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I saw it too as I think it gives Kelly Bryant an option too. I mean, because he has graduated from Clemson.
Yeah.
Which is why he can play, of course. I think it gives him a sense, too, of more getting outside of South Carolina and seeing more of what kind of the middle is to where, I mean, you have teams that you might get drafted to playing up in, just up north where it gets a lot colder. And I know he does it in the SEC, or not in the SEC, in the ACC. I know he did it. But I think if you're playing in Missouri in November, I mean, it gets cold.
Yeah. So I really here's the last thing I'm gonna make one more statement, then I'm gonna ask you one last question before we get off here. But so my statement about what you guys are getting with Kelly Bryant, and I really think that Kelly Bryant's at his best when he has something to prove. And so after Deshaun Watson got drafted in the NFL, and it was, Kelly Bryant, it was his time to prove something, and he came out and lit the world on fire and had an amazing season in 2017 with Clemson. It's because he had something to prove. And so I think right now, after everything that transpired last year with the whole controversy with Trevor Lawrence coming in and him getting benched after 4 games, and then, of course, deciding to transfer, taking advantage of that new redshirt rule. And so I really feel like that Kelly Bryant this year feels like he has something to prove. And so I really expect Kelly Bryant to have maybe a record year. For Kelly Bryant, maybe not a record year in college football, but I think that a lot of people are going to be surprised. Even the people that think that Missouri is, a middle-of-the-road SEC team, I think they're going to be very surprised when they see how good that Kelly Bryant plays at Missouri, in that, especially with that manageable schedule in that conference. And so I think that you guys are in for a treat this year. I'm going to be rooting for you. I'm going to be rooting for Kelly Bryant. I hope you guys beat Georgia. I hope you beat Florida. I hope you beat Tennessee. I hope you beat South Carolina. I really do. I hope you beat all of them. Now, if you end up, well, you won't end up playing Clemson because you're banned in the postseason. But I was going to say that'd be the only reason. The only game I'm not pulling for you is if you played Clemson. But that's not. I don't even think possible at this point. But before we get off here, I just want to ask you your final thoughts on your projection. Give me your worst case scenario for Missouri's final record in 2019, and give me your best case scenario.
I think my worst case scenario for this Mizzou team for next year would be winning 6 games. I think if they won 6 games, it would be a failure of a season with all the talent they have coming back.
Okay.
And who they picked up. Best, I mean, I can see Mizzou going into that Georgia game undefeated with who we play. And
when's that?
I know there's going to be that is week 9 we played Georgia.
Okay, so you think there's a good best case scenario, you think you could possibly be 8-0 going into the Georgia game?
I do, because I mean I believe we can beat South Carolina.
Right.
I mean
I do too.
And then we play Ole Miss. I believe they can beat Ole Miss.
I do too.
Ole Miss has lost a ton of talent on that team.
Right.
Kentucky, they lost Benny Snell and Josh Allen. I mean, those are 2
good point.
huge parts of that team.
Good point.
And then we get to the Georgia game. And, I mean, Mizzou seems to play Georgia great for that first half. They always seem to, even when people never expect it, like 2 years ago, we were up where it was like we had 28 points in the first half. So I think if Mizzou could just play Georgia well, I think that'll really lift them up. And I mean, we have Florida's number. Any Florida fan that doesn't say we have their number in football, just look at the previous games. We went to the Swamp when you guys were ranked 13. We beat you. You come to Mizzou, we beat you. And then there's the Tennessee game. So I think that Mizzou, honestly, could have one loss to Georgia this year for a great season.
That would be an amazing season. If you guys win 11-1, that would be, well, that'd be the best season that Missouri's had in a long time, right?
It would be the best season since we went to the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma State in 2013, I believe.
Yeah.
And our second loss that season was to that fantastic Auburn team that ended up going to the national championship in the SEC championship game.
Now, wouldn't that be some shit if you guys actually won the SEC somehow? Listen, first of all, I'm not predicting that's going to happen. I don't think you'll win the SEC. But if you did, you won the SEC and you can't go to the postseason. Wouldn't that be a shame?
That it would be. I mean, it's how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. All because of some stupid tutor that did a test for somebody. I mean, that is so first of all, I don't even want to get – that's a whole other segment that I could get into. That is the stupidest reason to ban a postseason that I've ever heard of in my life.
Well, the one thing that I got so mad about that is I believe that was done in 2014 is when that allegation happened. None of those players are still here.
And not only that,
in any of the sports.
Does anybody really think that this isn't that something that's similar to that? I'm not saying that exact situation, but does anybody really think that that's not going on at almost every single college? I mean, come on.
It goes on at every single school.
Of course it does.
I don't care where you go. I don't care how good your academics are.
I agree.
There is a reason why these football players who come in with below the line that your school sets, and they do very well.
I agree.
There is a reason, and it's not because they decided they were going to slack off in high school and then they're going to be super smart in college. They have tutors doing almost everything for them.
I agree, and this is the same thing that pisses me off when I hear Georgia Tech fans and Duke fans and whoever, Notre Dame or whoever, and they say, oh, the reason our football team's no good is because our academic standards are so high. Meanwhile, they've all got elite basketball teams. Are you telling me that Kyrie Irving went to Duke? This guy thinks the earth is flat, but he's a genius? Come on now. They're willing to make exceptions. They're willing to make exceptions for great athletes who are not, that smart. All of them. And so
even at Clemson. Clemson has, since they won that national championship, I have a friend that goes there. They had so many people that wanted to go to Clemson because, that's what happens when you win something big, people want to go to the school. They upped, I heard they actually upped their requirements to get in because they had so many applications.
Yeah.
I can promise you, because you and I both know, there are players at Clemson too. There are players at Missouri. There's players at every single school, like you said, that shouldn't get into the school if they weren't athletes.
Well, of course. But here's the difference. Is I think that some schools manage, if they have a kid who's in high school who doesn't meet the requirements, they'll put a good support staff around him as far as the tutoring and make him really buckle down. Now, I will say Clemson is very strict on their student athletes. They had a record this year for how many people graduated on their team and how many people graduated early on their team. So they do care about academics, but for anybody to pretend as if these schools aren't bending the academic rules. I don't care what school it is. I don't care if it's Clemson, Missouri, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Northwestern, Stanford, or whoever. If anybody thinks that they don't bend the rules for elite athletes, then they're living in a bizarro world. It's not true.
I completely agree. You have players that I watched a video. You were talking about Georgia Tech, and you said about Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, exactly.
How he went to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
I know a couple people that were looking at Georgia Tech, and I guarantee they were smarter than Calvin Johnson.
Exactly.
Didn't get in.
And I'm not saying Calvin Johnson's a dummy, but he's not Einstein.
No, Georgia Tech is a phenomenal school to go to. If you have a degree from Georgia Tech, you are doing great.
Yeah.
You are going to have a great job. You're going to do. You have a great work ethic. You're doing everything right if you get a degree from there. But for people, I hate when people say our school isn't good because we require high academics. Because, it's just a dumb thing.
Well, just look at basketball.
Then if you
that's all you got to do.
Especially you can look at football. Look at Stanford.
Yeah. But Stanford's not winning national titles or anything, but just look at basketball and you see Duke and North Carolina and Virginia. Virginia's another really good academic school. Just go down the list. Probably the top 10 basketball teams in America are all elite academic universities, but they don't have a problem getting in a guy that thinks the earth is flat into their school, So don't tell.
And I think that's because, with those schools, they've been historically great at basketball, and that is their huge moneymaker.
Yeah.
And then fans of those schools try to come in and say, well, our football team isn't good. Well, it's because your football team doesn't attract the same, like at Duke. Your football team does not attract the same amount of attention as your basketball team.
Yeah. It's just an excuse. That's all it is. But my point is that this whole bowl ban with Missouri, I think is ridiculous. First of all, I'm not a big fan of the NCAA rules to begin with, but that's just so stupid. Why would you punish a current team for something as minute as what happened at Missouri? We're not even talking about some sort of major scandal as if they were paying players or, anything like that. It's just that's such a minor infraction for them to impose a bowl ban on Missouri for something that stupid. It's just ridiculous. I don't get it at all, but it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
Obviously there's nothing me or you can do about it. I just think it's dumb. That's all. But.
No, all I can sit here and do is say it's dumb. You say it shouldn't happen, but it did. And you think the NCAA is going to listen to you or me? No.
No.
They're not.
No. Anyway, man, listen, I got to go. But, hey, I really appreciate you calling. Everybody thank Cole for calling in. He's an amazing and fantastic Missouri fan, and one that actually likes Pigskin Pete, which puts him at the top of my list right off the bat. But thank you, Cole, for calling in. Hey, listen, don't be a stranger. I do these live call-in shows on Thursdays afternoons. So anytime there's any sort of Missouri news, especially during the football season, if you want to talk about Missouri football games after they happened or before they happened, I would love for you to be my connection as far as Missouri is concerned to call in and give us some information.
I will for sure stay updated, and I will keep you updated on things that I hear also.
All right, man. Listen, I really appreciate you calling in. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, man. Well, there you have it, folks. Cole calling in, checking in with me about Missouri football. Hope you all enjoyed that. I know I did. I learned a little bit about Missouri football today. And anytime I learn anything about another team other than Clemson, it's a good day for Pigskin Pete. Tomorrow, I will have, I hope, Smallville calling in to talk about both Tennessee Titans and the Tennessee Volunteers. I hope you all don't miss that. And then, of course, on Thursday, on my live show, I will be doing a live drawing for both contests. The Patreon contest between Border Bob and DeGoat Watson for a $50 prepaid Visa gift card. And then a whole list of other people for the Super Chat contest. And I'm a man. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I will be doing a live drawing for that as well. And I'll be sending either a shirt or a hat to the winner of that. You're all amazing. You're all fantastic. I will see you soon. Have a great day. Pigskin Pete, checking out.